We'll do the song one more time, as we do. Hey, there we go. How are we doing? Are we good? Are we hot? Are we in a garage? And we're just very hot? I have a question for you viewers. Maybe you watch a lot. This is maybe like our 58th show, something like that. Do I look crisper? Do I look crisper? Because I took a towel up to the camera for the first time ever since I've had the computer. I feel like I look crisper. It might just be because the interview tonight is great. I recorded on Zoom, and Zoom, when I was done with it, like the file pops up and the file was just smaller compared to what it usually is. I don't know why, but we have a great interview. Wes Pratt is the Chief Diversity Officer at Missouri State University. And he just has a wealth of experience before that here in this particular area. He grew up here in Springfield, went to Central High School, and became a civil rights activist at that age. Then went to Drury and was an activist at that age as well. Moved away to San Diego and then moved back here. I guess he went to law school, moved to San Diego, moved back here in 2007. And he and his wife Francine are such an asset to the area. Glad to have him back. So let's do our sponsors. Is anyone watching? You guys watching? I don't have any comments yet. Usually I get a bunch of comments right away. I'm so insecure. Okay. Old Missouri Bank. OMB Bank. They like supporting people making something right where they are here in Springfield. How about that? We've also got OTC, Ozarks Technical Community College. You can get your entire degree online, and they're also just great. They can help you change your course of your life in a meaningful way. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for commenting. It's been a feeling like I'm by myself in the garage, which I truly am. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're just going to go straight into it. But it is, I don't know, it's weird how much worse the video quality is. I won't obsess over it. Do I obsess over things on my show generally? Yes. This one in the garage, not so much. Hi, Francine. Okay, so this is a 23-minute interview with Wes. Wes is, I mean, we've had him on the show a couple times, and he is Mandy, you're thinking about how much crisper I look? I just wiped it. I wiped in front. What a dummy. It took me this long to do it. All right, here we go. I'm paying attention. Yeah, so Wes he's been on the show a couple times before, and he's just such a dynamic guy. And I don't know, he's kind of used to having this conversation and does it so well. So here we go. This is we actually interviewed him yesterday, but let's do it. That's a real start and stop introduction. That's okay. Here we go. One of my favorite people, Wes Pratt. Let's do it. Wes, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
And you. So let's see. We were just kind of discussing this. It sounds like your life, you've not slowed down at all when the pandemic started.
No, actually, I had just got back from LA, and they'd canceled school. And then, so the next week, they canceled, actually, they went on the spring break 2 days earlier. And so we went right into the next week dealing with the whole Zoom issue. So we've been addressing these issues. I'm part of the President's Administrative Council, so working to deal with the COVID impacts, how we were going to function at the university, then preparing to come back to the university. It's been a real challenge, but it's also been a good opportunity to work very closely with some folks and get a little closer. You tend to get closer in a crisis, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But then, of course, with the dealing with the pandemic, within the pandemic, as I call it, it's just it's been nonstop. So uh,
Yeah.
we'll do the best we can, and hopefully America will do the best it can in due course.
Yeah, I think you have such an interesting perspective locally in that you are involved in various types of like protests, like in terms of like trying for justice and equality and stuff since you were in high school, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, there was I guess I was 15 years old, and there was a professor from then SMS College, Dr. Anderson McCullough, and then a Baptist minister, William E. Pitt, and they organized us into the NAACP Youth Council. So we began our activism as students, and so I sort of took to it to a duck, like a duck to water, man. I mean, uh, I think I was probably growing up in an environment that was pretty hostile to me as an African American male or a young man, and so it imbued in me the desire to speak truth to power and to address some of these issues that were prevalent and are still prevalent today. So it inspired me to go to law school, and I've been blessed to have had some experiences outside of Springfield, which provided me with a certain skill set, I think. But yeah, but it was I was a student activist, community activist, then went to law school, and then got involved in government. So it's been an interesting journey, and then got to return home to my hometown in 2007 and go to work for Missouri State with its public affairs mission, which was very intriguing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And but did you do your undergrad here?
Yeah, I went to Drury College.
Drury. Okay.
Yeah, I went to Drury College, and they used to. I can remember when I was a kid in elementary school going to Boyd Elementary School. I lived over on Washington Street, next to where the old Washington Avenue Baptist Church was, and
Hmm.
they would chase me off that campus and call me every name but a child of God.
Mm.
And then the irony of all of that was I had a high school counselor who was a sophomore counselor, and I was a senior in high school, second semester. I'm a good athlete, I'm a good student, but nobody had talked to me about the opportunity to go to college. Miss Dean Walker was her name, and she got me an academic scholarship to Drury. And the rest is history. It sort of started my trajectory. I was still a student community activist, college activist at that time, and uh, and ran for city council. Um, I believe it was in 1975 here, and I lost by 944 votes and decided to go to law school. Went to the University of San Diego Law School, and the opportunities were so great out there. I really didn't come back home until 2007. So it's just kind of interesting how things turned out. But had it not been for Miss Dean Walker, had it not been for the experiences I had. And the irony of going to Drury was they used to chase me off as a kid, called me all kind of names, threw my little brother into used to have a koi pond or a fish pond over in one of those buildings. And then I ended up being an outstanding senior man when I graduated. So, it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah. So I think one of the fallacies a lot of us white folks have had is racism is a historic thing. It's something that happened, and I'm curious then from your perspective, being here, growing up and going through that, and then leaving and coming back. Did you find it to be different at all in those terms, or was it the same?
Well, I found it to be different, but in a way that I saw that there was more engagement with the majority community and communities of color. I knew it really was similar in so many ways because when I got hired at Missouri State, um, I can remember there was an article in the newspaper. There was an article about me being the diversity outreach recruiter,
Hmm.
and there was somebody that back then who commented in the paper, Wes Pratt was a black racist at Drury and he's a black racist now, signed Crawdad. You know, and so this is someone who was impugning my name and he couldn't even sign his name, whoever Crawdad is, you know.
Yeah.
So in that way, because of the lack of cultural consciousness and awareness of so many people, and the just the fact that we're in a predominantly white area of the state. I'm working at a predominantly white institution. Um, some of the attitudes are still quite prevalent, and
Yeah.
I think with this national climate that we're in, with the polarization and divisiveness, a lot of that gets fanned still. So, in some ways, Springfield has changed. I believe there's more opportunities for folks from diverse backgrounds, but still there's a significant lack of cultural consciousness, competency uh, among folks, particularly in the majority community, in the rural communities. And so it still creates issues when you have such a polarized national climate.
Yeah. So speak about, I like that phrase a lot, cultural consciousness. Speak about that and the importance of that.
Okay, well, the thing about cultural consciousness is that we have to develop the awareness, number one, of who we are as a people and the value of other folks. But in order to do that, once you become more aware, then you have to develop the knowledge. And so you take it to another step. So you become knowledgeable. You may take certain classes. You may engage more often with people from diverse backgrounds. But then you have to deal with, acquiring the skills that are necessary to negotiate. Because the reality is, implicit bias is a reality for everybody. Everybody has biases that they don't even know they may have. And
Hmm.
in a place like Springfield, Missouri, um, there it goes a little bit. There may be bias and there may be racism, xenophobia, anti-immigrant feelings and things of that nature. So, but then you have to be able to negotiate those cross-cultural differences. And so that's what I mean when I'm talking about cultural consciousness. It's just the awareness, the knowledge, and the skill sets to really to engage people and to value what everybody brings to the table. And that's a challenge in a place like Southwest Missouri, certainly with its demographic makeup. But the demographics are changing. And I think those demographic changes that are occurring nationwide and even regionally, and, some people are just, it places them in apprehension that they're going to lose something. So that ability to be culturally conscious will help us, I think, in the long run, but that takes a little bit of effort. You got to recognize where you are. And once you acquire those skills, I mean, everybody has biases, right? And so you'll be able to recognize when your bias comes out so you can mitigate, or not
Yeah.
say something that might be insensitive. So there was an author that wrote about the fact that sometimes it's not the intent of what one says, it's the impact. And so
Hmm.
if you're culturally conscious, hopefully you can mitigate, some of those negative impacts or impulses or some of that implicit bias that you've acquired through a lifetime of living in a place that is not very racially or ethnically diverse.
Yeah. Do you feel, um, uh, I mean, your experience would be, I imagine, day to day might be very different if you were living in a place that had better diversity. Do you feel like there's an undue burden to try to explain this to people, or is it part of
You know,
what
I,
you
I,
do?
I've sort of been in this business. I've been in this. It's just been a mindset of mine since I was 15. So it's just part of who I am, and it can be frustrating. It can be daunting at times. Certain these national incidents that have occurred. To be honest, sometimes they make you angry, but you have to look at the bigger picture, I think. I mean, hopefully, what has gone on in the relatively recent past is going to motivate people to look at the whole issue of racism, particularly institutional racism, um, and how it has affected, their perspectives and their relationships and their opportunities, that some other people may not have that opportunity. And so I look at it's like I was telling someone the other day, it's like, and during the civil rights movement, and that was when I was a kid, there seemed to be a change in trajectory of the civil rights movement when the dogs were sicked on the demonstrators. And once America saw that, it sort of changed the reality. And I think what we observed, certainly in the George Floyd situation, uh, put a lot of things on people's mind. And then the Central Park issue, and then the Arbery issue down in Alabama. I mean, some folks are saying, well, I didn't realize that, things were still like that, and the reality is because we haven't dealt with racism effectively over the years, and largely because I'm gonna say this, Jeff, largely because white people haven't come to grips with their racist bias, implicit bias backgrounds, that it has been able to manifest and be manipulated, sometimes by politicians, sometimes by historical events. And so we never get to the point where we actually resolve it and reconcile it and then move on. And so, that's the dilemma I think that we find ourselves in. But I think perhaps, hopefully, this is a point when everybody will look at themselves, and then realize that I've got to be much more aware. I've got to become much more knowledgeable. And then, I've got to be able to develop the skills to effectively negotiate our cross-cultural differences. We live in a global society, a global world, different religions, different people, different beliefs, you know, different thoughts. And it's okay that there's difference, but you have to be able to value the inclusion of diversity. And unfortunately, we haven't acquired the skill sets over all of these years to really do that. And that's why, the work I do, yes, it can be exhausting. It can be tiring. And you hear people say, I'm just so tired. I'm just so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I think Fannie Lou Hamer said that.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that. But this is just who I am. And I'll probably be doing this until I decide I'm going to sit on my back porch in a rocking chair or something and watch the cows in the far pasture.
So, is there a sense to you, someone that's been an activist for so many years, that I guess a few years ago, I feel like it was kind of a raise in consciousness, and then it kind of went away. Now it's come back. Is there a sense of like, yeah, it's happening. Of course it's happening. We've been telling you it's happening.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting. And, a lot of young people are demonstrating, and even back in 2014, 2015, the Michael Brown situation and the Mizzou situation, it's when and students would be upset. They couldn't believe what was happening in 2015. They couldn't believe now what's happening in 2020. And these have always been systemic issues. Police community relations. I mean, here in Springfield, we work well with the chief. We started out actually doing diversity training with the police officers. And when we would talk about implicit bias, they didn't want to buy that. They want to say, hey, show me where I've discriminated. But what they didn't understand is that we all have these implicit biases. And so we did bias-based police training. We worked with the police chief. And certainly Chief Williams is a little different makeup, a little different than the guy who was there before. And certainly from what I've seen and observed, from some of the police chiefs or sheriffs who are running police departments in other jurisdictions. And so it is about a relationship, but you can't effectively fight crime if you don't trust the police. And I think the police department here has worked to do that. It's been a journey, though. It's been a journey, because when I was in 1971, an off-duty police officer shot a kid that I grew up with who lived less than a half a block from me, shot him in the back, and it was ruled a justifiable shooting. But I was at the inquest, and I was a young boy. That was before I even went off to college. Went off to law school. I was in college at the time. and I'm listening to the inquest. And how could this be justifiable? And so this, unfortunately, is a part of the history of America, and certainly part of the history of Missouri. Missouri being a slave state, and all that comes with that. And so, um, that's why I talk about that awareness piece. You know, and I think certain folks are starting to understand it, but I've understood it for a long time,
Yeah.
and so it is, like I say, it is daunting and it can be frustrating. But that's why I hope that not only young people, but my brothers and sisters from the European persuasion,
Mhm.
really start to check themselves and try to understand, develop some empathy, and I think that is what happened when they observed Mr. Floyd's life being snuffed out. I think folks had this aha moment that, oh, this stuff really does happen. And I can tell you, as an African American male, I got African American sons. I got African American grandson, and I worry about them simply because this is the nature of America. And to me, that's something that has to be resolved. It won't be resolved in my lifetime. I'm convinced. I look back and I've spent over 50 years doing this work, and and sometimes I am a little bit dismayed that we haven't come any further. But I recognize there has been progress, but it's all a uh, relative
Yeah.
term.
I imagine it's a there's a balance within you doing this for so long. There has to be this balance between patience and urgency at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I used to think, there's no sense of urgency, particularly in behalf of our political institutions, and they become so politicized with special interests and all of that. You know, but to me, it's like there has not been a sense of urgency, and it always takes a crisis. The problem is that after the crisis, you have this come together, this uh, aha moment, or this kumbaya moment, and then over time, it just sort of dissipates, and we go back to the way it is. But I think we really need to we need to be teaching diversity in America in our public schools, and that's diversity from all sectors. It doesn't deal with race, but
Mm.
of every protected class, but our LGBTQ plus community, our able disabled community, our differences in religion and beliefs and thought. That needs to be a part of the public school curriculum. I used to teach intro to African American studies, and the white students would tell us, "Well, why don't we learn this in schools?" Well, I think it's going to be incumbent upon our public school systems and even our private school systems, but you know, to teach diversity in America. And then we've got to, when they move into coming into colleges, and that, we have a public affairs mission. So we even have to be more strident about what we need to do to be anti-racist in a society that is as multiracial and multi-ethnic as we are, and living in a global economy and a global society. I mean, we simply cannot persist to continue in the ways that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like, so this will be my final question for you then.
Okay.
Um, so Springfield has diversity challenges, as you've mentioned, and also, I think to your point, a challenge in welcoming diversity. So how do people are passionate and motivated right now on the whole? How is it that we next June are similarly minded and doesn't fade out?
Well, I think we really got to be conscientious about trying to address these issues. And even though they're difficult and they don't make us feel good, we've got to sort of lean into that discomfort. And, I have colleagues at Missouri State, Dr. Lau Foster, who I understand you've had on,
Mhm.
and Dr. Leslie Anderson, um, the faculty members who are coming here from other places. And we've been working, trying to promote um, being anti-racist. And so we do the Facing Racism Institute. We do cultural consciousness training. We're developing a plan now at Missouri State to take that to a whole nother level with the leadership of Cliff Smart. But I think you have to start to become like aware. It starts with awareness, and then you got to have knowledge, and then you got to understand. You got to understand that folks have certain experiences, and you got to be able to listen. And not be judgmental. And so I think there are a number of steps. Matter of fact, Dr. Foster and Dr. Anderson have put together relevant responses to the resurgence of racism, which are these I don't know how many steps there are, but it's like read books that expand your knowledge of slavery, the construction of whiteness and communities of color and their experiences. Receive the experiences of people of color. Listen deeply and believe that their lived experiences and impacts are different than yours. Revisit your first experience and awareness of race. What were you told? What were you taught? So they've got, maybe 20 of these R's. It's like
Mhm.
time to move beyond the 3 R's and deal with the relevant responses to this resurgence of racism. So there's things you have to do, to enhance your ability to negotiate those cross-cultural differences. But I think when students come, I want them to understand the history of Springfield. I want them to understand the history of the African American and the Native Americans, certainly with the Trail of Tears. I want them to see George Washington Carver National Park and Battlefield National Park and understand the history of that. Understand what the community is, and also understand what you might, what you might experience here. And I say to them, the fact that someone may be biased against you, call you the N-word, or call you a name, or that's not a reflection of you. That's a reflection of them. You know, and nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. So, but you have to connect them also, not only to the campus, but to the larger community. And so Missouri State, we're trying to work at connecting them to the to the campus. We can do a better job of that. But I also want to connect them to the larger community.
Yeah.
Springfield is my home. I grew up here. I came back here after being gone for 30 years. So it's a place I think that has tremendous upside. And the fact that its size and its relationship sort of approach to life, it's a place I think can be a model for the rest of the nation. But we have to put in the work. And I sometimes think that it's comfortable, particularly from people in the majority community, to deal with the issues of bias and racism, or all of the isms, actually. But I think there are people of goodwill who are here. There are businesses. We got a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce to sponsor our Facing Racism Institute. The Chamber of Commerce brought that here. And
Yeah.
I remember when I first moved back here, Jeff, and the Chamber of Commerce announced that their agenda for the next 2 years were going to be to fight poverty and to promote diversity and inclusion. And that was my first time I'd ever been to a chamber annual dinner in my life. And if I had false teeth, they would have fallen out of my head. Because, in growing up, the Chamber of Commerce and the business community were simply not that responsive to the needs of folks who look like me, or people from diverse backgrounds. And so there are folks of goodwill here who are working consistently, and we need to build on that. But it's going to take the individual and the collective. So I think all of us need to individually look at ourselves and assess, okay, how did I miss this? What needs to be done? What do I need to become a better human being and to develop the empathy and respect and dignity for all people?
That's awesome. Wes, I appreciate you coming on, and also just want to say appreciate you being in this fight for 40, 50, whatever years, being
Yeah.
moving the needle in Springfield for so many years. What a legacy. So
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate it, man. It's always good to talk to you. I
yeah,
think this is about the third time I've been on your show.
it's right. Number 3. You're
All
a
right,
star
my brother,
on
you
here.
take care. All
Yeah.
right.
Thanks, Wes.
You
Wes Pratt. Um, maybe some of you were just introduced him for the first time. Those of you that have known him, my question is, what would what would we do without Wes Pratt in this community? Seriously. And my other thought was what he kind of wrapped up with. My kind of takeaway from that was we are rightly all trying to fight these systemic racism issues. And West does such a great job of taking it from larger issues down to individual issues and saying, okay, and what about you? What about you? What about you that thinks you're not part of the problem? And maybe in a lot of ways you aren't. What about you? And are you willing to look at yourself? I think that's the challenge, right? I loved having him on the show. Number 3. All right, we'll be back Monday night. Monday night, I have Justin Pippin's schedule. Justin put on a leadership and diversity conference in March. He's also involved in Minorities in Business organization. So we're going to keep this rolling. Um, yeah, just kind of hang out in that the glory of listening to Wes. And yeah, I don't know. I'm hot, man. I'm sweaty. We'll see you guys. See you guys on Monday. Thanks for joining in with these important discussions. We've kind of nixed the comedy for a while, but we'll kind of get back to it at some point. So look inward. As you point outward, look inward. That's what I'm saying, I guess. All right. Goodbye. See you Monday. I'm so sweaty.